Hey, Raiders fans. Today we need to talk about what is undeniably the most frustrating season in recent memory for our beloved Las Vegas Raiders. If you watched the game yesterday, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Losing 31-0 to the reigning Super Bowl champions is a hard pill to swallow, especially when it feels like the team is trying, yet the results keep pointing in the wrong direction. It's not just about one bad game. It's about a season where week after week, we've seen glimpses of effort, but those glimpses never translate into execution on the field. Watching this team feels like an endless loop of the same mistakes, the same breakdowns, and the same excuses. When you look at the performance of the Raiders this season, it's hard to separate the coaching from the players' output. It's one thing to respect a coach's past accomplishments, but it's another to cling to those achievements while the current team struggles so visibly. Pete Carroll's legacy as a coach is undeniable, but the reality is that the Raiders right now are failing to deliver in almost every facet of the game. The offense is predictable, the defense struggles to execute the simplest assignments, and special teams continue to falter in ways that cost the team critical momentum. The reliance on past success, rather than addressing the current gaps, has left this team in a precarious position, and fans are left questioning if the strategy and leadership are even aligned with today's NFL standards. Looking at the numbers paints a bleak picture. The Raiders managed only 75 total yards in the game against the Eagles, which is historically awful. This is only the second time in franchise history that the team has been held under 75 yards in a single game. The last time this happened was in 1961, which for context was more than 60 years ago. In addition, the Raiders have now recorded multiple games without scoring in the same season for the first time since 2006. These are statistics that not only demonstrate poor execution, but also highlight the systemic issues within the team. Week 7 versus the Chiefs already showed us what happens when the Raiders are overwhelmed, losing 31-0 with starters pulled before the fourth quarter. To see history repeat itself in such a short span of time is alarming. One of the biggest challenges this team faces is accountability, and it starts from the top. Throughout this season, finger-pointing has been a recurring theme, and not always in productive ways. When a head coach consistently points to external factors rather than addressing internal issues, it's almost impossible for the team to course-correct. The offensive line has been a glaring weakness all season, yet changes have been minimal. The running game remains stagnant, and despite drafting a high-profile running back, the team struggles to generate consistent yardage. Part of this stems from the decisions surrounding the offensive coaching staff, including Pete Carroll's son, whose role as run-game coordinator and offensive line coach has not yielded positive results. The lack of adjustments, combined with high expectations, leaves fans frustrated and players without clear direction. Even the quarterback situation reflects instability. Geno Smith, a high-investment player, seems disconnected from the current team culture and has expressed a desire to move on. When the quarterback, often the face of the offense, lacks full commitment or motivation, it magnifies the issues across the field. The combination of an underperforming offensive line, a stagnant running game, and a quarterback seeking a fresh start creates a perfect storm of underperformance. Add to that a coaching staff that seems hesitant to make bold moves or correct internal misalignments, and it's clear why the Raiders are struggling on such a fundamental level. Defensively, the situation is equally concerning. Even with talented players on the roster, the execution often falls short. There are too many instances where basic responsibilities are missed, gaps are left open, and assignments go unfulfilled. Veteran players are forced to compensate for errors, and the overall cohesion suffers. Watching clips from games shows players visibly frustrated, yelling at one another to cover gaps or adjust positioning in real time because the system in place is not functioning properly. A well-prepared defensive scheme should anticipate these situations, but instead, it feels improvised, like players are guessing or hoping someone else will step up. The result is a team that appears disorganized and vulnerable at critical moments. The Raiders' offensive struggles mirror this same lack of preparation. The game plans are predictable, and the adjustments are minimal. Reaching into multiple cookie jars, trying to fix issues on the fly, only seems to make things worse. There is no rhythm, no creativity, and no consistency. The offense runs in predictable patterns reminiscent of schemes from previous years that no longer translate to today's NFL defenses. When the play calling is formulaic and the execution falters, every game becomes a test of patience and endurance for both the players and the fans. Despite efforts to correct these mistakes, the team continues to face the same challenges week after week, creating a cycle of frustration that seems almost impossible to break. History and records make the situation even more striking. The Raiders have become one of the few franchises in NFL history to record some of the lowest offensive outputs in multiple games in a single season. The team has been held to fewer than 100 yards of offense more than once, a feat almost unheard of in the modern era. Being shut out by 31 points in 2 separate games this season alone places this team among historically poor-performing squads. To think about the broader context, the decades of Raider football, including both stellar and challenging seasons, makes this current state even harder to accept. Even teams that struggled in the past rarely experienced such consistent offensive and defensive futility across multiple games. While coaching and execution are certainly under scrutiny, player morale and cohesion cannot be ignored. When the quarterback is unsure about the future, when key positional groups fail to perform, and when coaching directions seem contradictory or ineffective, the players are left to navigate a chaotic environment. This season has shown that even with talented individuals, the lack of coordination and clarity translates directly to losses. The Raiders are a team of potential without realization, capable athletes without systems that allow them to succeed, and a fan base increasingly questioning whether the current approach is sustainable. And beyond the X's and O's, there is the emotional toll. Watching a team struggle in such dramatic fashion can be demoralizing for both players and fans. Games that should provide excitement, rivalry, and competitive spirit instead leave a sense of frustration and helplessness. From historically low yardage to multiple shutouts, every statistic reinforces the narrative that this is a team unable to execute the simplest football tasks consistently. The challenges go beyond one game or 1 week. They are systemic and pervasive, reflecting decisions and strategies that have not evolved to meet the realities of modern football. This season, more than ever, calls into question leadership, decision-making, and accountability at every level. Fans and analysts alike have seen evidence of mismanagement and missed opportunities, with every loss underscoring systemic issues. Players who should thrive are left to compensate for gaps in coaching and strategy, creating a cycle of underperformance that seems almost inescapable. The Raiders have entered uncharted territory, combining historical futility with ongoing internal dysfunction, a combination that is difficult to reconcile with the proud history of the franchise. Continuing with the saga of the 2025 Raiders, it's impossible not to examine how the coaching staff has contributed to the downward spiral. Pete Carroll, despite his illustrious past, seems increasingly disconnected from the modern demands of the game and the specific needs of this roster. Coaching in the NFL has changed dramatically over the past decade, and what worked in the past does not automatically work today. Systems need to evolve. Play calling must adapt to the strengths and weaknesses of a roster, and accountability has to be enforced without exception. Unfortunately, the Raiders staff has struggled to implement any of these fundamentals consistently, leaving players without clear guidance or cohesion on both sides of the ball. One of the most glaring issues is the offensive line. Week after week, the team has been unable to establish any sort of presence in the trenches, resulting in a running game that is largely ineffective and a passing game that struggles to gain momentum. The team drafted a top-tier running back, yet without solid protection up front, that investment has largely gone to waste. Add to that the dynamic of having a key coaching role filled by Pete Carroll's son, and the optics of nepotism create an additional layer of frustration. The offense fails not just because of talent gaps, but because of a combination of poor scheme execution, questionable personnel decisions, and a lack of clear accountability. Watching the Raiders try to run plays feels like a constant struggle to even reach first down markers, and it highlights a systemic issue that cannot be fixed by mere effort alone. Meanwhile, the quarterback situation adds yet another layer of complexity. Geno Smith, who commands a significant contract, has expressed a desire to move on from the Raiders. When the team's most important position is filled by a player who is mentally checked out or seeking a fresh start elsewhere, it's nearly impossible to maintain offensive rhythm and confidence. Quarterbacks are the linchpins of any modern NFL offense, and when that player's mindset is not fully committed, the ripple effect is felt across every aspect of offensive execution. The disconnect between leadership and personnel creates confusion, missed assignments, and an overall lack of urgency on the field. Defensively, the Raiders have seen flashes of individual talent, yet the lack of coordination continues to plague the unit. The scheme often appears improvised, with players unsure of their assignments or forced to cover for mistakes made by others. Veteran players find themselves shouting instructions on the field, attempting to organize a defense that should have a clearly defined structure. The chaos is evident not only to fans watching at home, but to the league at large, as opponents exploit gaps and make big plays with alarming consistency. A defense that should be a source of pride and reliability instead becomes a liability, exposing the team to repeated failures and demoralizing losses. History is not kind to this iteration of the Raiders. The numbers tell a story that cannot be ignored. Multiple games without scoring, historically low total yardage, repeated shutouts by significant margins. These are records that should concern every supporter of the franchise. Being held to fewer than 100 yards of offense twice in a single season is a rarity in the modern NFL, and the Raiders have now become part of that small and unfortunate club. The season statistics are more than just numbers. They are evidence of systemic failure, a clear signal that the current strategies, coaching decisions, and player execution are all misaligned. Accountability remains a central concern. Week after week, the narrative has been about pointing fingers externally rather than addressing internal failings. The offensive line, the running game, and the quarterback position have all suffered under inconsistent leadership and unclear expectations. Leadership requires not just strategy, but also the ability to make tough decisions and enforce standards without favoritism. When players or coaches are allowed to underperform without consequence, the culture of the team suffers, and the results on the field reflect that decay. Fans are left watching a team that appears disorganized, unprepared, and directionless, a stark contrast to the proud tradition of the Raiders. It is not just about lost games, but the manner in which those games are lost. Predictable play calling, lack of adaptation to opponent strategies, and repeated failures to capitalize on opportunities have left the Raiders trailing in nearly every contest. There is no momentum, no sense of urgency, and no visible improvement from week to week. Even when the talent exists on a roster, the systems in place fail to leverage that talent effectively. Watching the offense stagnate and the defense crumble repeatedly creates a narrative of inevitability. Losses are expected because preparation, execution, and leadership have not evolved to meet the modern NFL standards. Player morale and engagement are equally affected. The quarterback, the offensive line, and skill players alike are all influenced by the tone set by the coaching staff. When players sense a lack of clear direction or inconsistent leadership, confidence erodes, mistakes multiply, and cohesion falls apart. In games where even small successes could spark momentum, the Raiders fail to convert, leaving fans frustrated and players demoralized. It becomes a cycle where poor execution feeds poor leadership, and poor leadership feeds poor execution, creating a season-long downward spiral that is difficult to escape. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The rumor mill is buzzing across the NFL, and all eyes are turning to Las Vegas, where whispers suggest a seismic shift in the Raiders' backfield. Word on the street is that Josh Jacobs, the powerhouse running back who once carried this team on his shoulders, is reportedly returning to reclaim his throne as the Raiders' RB1. Sources close to the organization hint that the front office is eager to bring back the player whose explosive runs and uncanny ability to find daylight have made him a fan favorite and a nightmare for opposing defenses. Speculation is running wild about what this could mean for the Raiders' offense. JACOBS' presence alone could reshape the team's offensive strategy, offering a dynamic edge that had been missing. Teammates are said to be quietly thrilled at the prospect of reuniting with the player whose work ethic and leadership were often cited as a driving force in the locker room. Coaches, meanwhile, are reportedly weighing how to reintegrate him seamlessly, considering that his style of play demands both patience and precision from the offensive line. Fans, of course, are already buzzing online, with social media feeds lighting up with excitement, nostalgia, and a touch of impatience. Some speculate that JACOBS' return could spark a resurgence reminiscent of the team's most electric moments in recent years, while others wonder how the Raiders' backfield hierarchy will shift with his presence. Could this be the spark that pushes the Raiders into a new era of offensive dominance? Rumors suggest so, though nothing has been officially confirmed. Even league insiders are weighing in, noting that a player of JACOBS' caliber rarely becomes available to return to familiar turf without generating some internal fireworks. Questions abound about roster moves, potential trades, and how his comeback might influence game plans. Yet, amid all the speculation, one thing seems clear. The mere idea of Josh Jacobs back in silver and black has reignited conversations about the Raiders' identity and their hunger for explosive, game-changing playmakers. Whether this is a fleeting whisper or the start of a significant shakeup, the chatter alone has captured the imagination of fans and pundits alike. In the world of the NFL, stories like this often take on a life of their own, and right now, the rumor of Josh Jacobs' return is the hottest ticket in town. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.